Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're continuing our first look at the American battleship tree split, looking over Tier 9 American battleship USS Minnesota. Now, of course, as we've said before, I'm allowed to show you the ship in port. We can look at the stats, we can look at the armor, we can do all kinds of poking around under the hood. I can't actually show you gameplay, still a work in progress, blah, 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 blah. Okay, disclaimer over, we're done. Alright, let's have a look at what is going on. Actually, let's go to the prettier screen. It's much cleaner over here. Here we go. Alright, so, survivability, starting at the top as we tend to, 76,300 HP. This is actually a little on the low end for the tier. There are only two Tier 9 battleships that have less HP than this, and that is USS Georgia and Alsace over in the French battleship tree, but that's it. Every other Tier 9 battleship has more HP. Now, if we're honest, the average is probably closer up to 80k, so it's not a huge gap, but it is, noteworthy. You're a little on the short end here, especially for a ship this huge. 40% torpedo protection does maintain, kind of carry that over from Kansas, one tier lower. This is well above average for the tier. Nice to see. Behind only Musashi's 55%, and of course Alsace at 44%. When you look over the armor, you will notice that she retains the same below the waterline citadel as Kansas does. So I'm assuming at this point this is now like a feature of the line, right? That citadeling one of these things is going to be very, very challenging just because of how submerged this citadel is. She also retains what we talked about on Kansas, which is the 32mm plate all over the extremities and upper works of this ship. It is literally everywhere. Belt armor, again, still 343. Not best in tier, not worst in tier, but solid. It'll get the job done. If you're angled well, this belt will shrug off shells. And if you're not angled well, you probably will eat some full pens. As we noted, citadeling one of these is going to be a challenge, not completely impossible, but should be no simple task. Maneuverability and concealment. So, continuing with our little trend of the line. Yep, this thick boy here. Look how fat this ship is. Am I the only one that sees a Colorado? I see a skinny Colorado trying to get out of this hull. I don't know what it is. That's just what I see when I look from that angle. But yeah, 23 knots. So yay, crappy speed. Ugh. 700-meter turning circle. That's actually best in tier, and it's not even close. Like the next best is like 860 or something. So I don't know, man. In theory, the way turning circles in this game work, if you go about half speed generally when you're turning, that's the optimal turning circle for your ship in terms of that's the tightest turning radius that you're going to generate. These ships already don't go very fast, and they have a pretty tight turning circle. So handling wise, they're fat and they're slow, but they might actually be able to do a decent job dodging torpedoes as long as they've got enough warning the torpedoes are coming in. So, you start specking out a captain for one of these ships, I'd strongly consider giving Vigilance a try. Rudder shift time, 16.7, pretty average. Nothing to write home about there. The concealment is bad, right? 17.5 kilometers on the surface is officially the worst non-Japanese battleship in the game, right? Izumo and Musashi are both worse. Every other Tier 9 battleship is better than this. So, yeah, I mean, it's a battleship. You don't expect to win any spotting games, but it kind of really does discourage you from even attempting or even thinking about, full stealth build. No, there's no hiding this thing. Look at it. Just look at it. Look at it. It's not hiding. Main battery. Now, again, like Kansas, there's some weird things going on here, so stay with me, okay? Now, I will say, things are not as dire here as they were with Kansas. I am super down on Kansas's main battery. I think it's a travesty. I think it's awful. Here, things don't look as bad, but there's some weird things going on I want to talk about. So, straight up, these are not the same guns as Iowa, okay? This thing here, 406 millimeters, same shell diameter, yes. However, you see here Minnesota's guns are listed as 45 calibers. Iowa's guns are 50 calibers. Okay, so historically in warships, when we see the same gun caliber with a shorter barrel, that translates into less shell velocity, and occasionally it translates into less range, but usually translates into less shell velocity, right? That is also historical. That's the way rifles and guns work. Okay. Here, however, the laws of physics do not seem to care that Minnesota's barrels are shorter than Iowa, because this ship fires the exact same shells as Iowa's 16-inch barrels. It fires them out of shorter barrels, and they move at the exact same speeds. That's right, those shell velocities you see listed there, 762 for the AP, 820 for the HE, those match the shell velocities of Iowa exactly. Not only that, that 23.3 kilometer range is identical to Iowa. So what you're getting on Minnesota, and I'll keep going on this in a minute, but literally you're getting the exact same gun performance as Iowa, you're just getting 3 more barrels, okay? They even have, I'm not kidding, I wasn't kidding, they even have the same dispersion ellipse, right? This is good news, at least for me, because when I play Iowa, I find Iowa's guns to be very comfortable and pretty reliable, right? But Minnesota does have a lower sigma value, so what that means is that, of course that's to be expected, right? When you're putting more barrels downrange, that's one of the ways that Wargaming balances things, is that they make it so that the pattern inside the dispersion ellipse clusters to the center less reliably the more shells you throw. If you've ever played a Fuso, you know what I'm talking about, okay? Just like Kansas, Minnesota reloads her barrels 1/3 slower, 33% slower, every 40 seconds for a salvo. Unlike Kansas, though, this does not translate into a DPM differential, because between the two ships, she has 33% more guns and she fires the exact same shells. So the DPM of Iowa and Minnesota is actually identical. It's the same number. Iowa fires 4 salvos for Minnesota's 3. But in that 2-minute time span that it takes each of those ships to get those salvos off, they will put exactly the same number of shells downrange. So, I don't know. The firepower difference between these two ships is much, much less than between Kansas and North Carolina. Secondary battery, I mean, nothing fancy here. She gets 4 of the dual-purpose 5-inch 38s. They are what they are. They have, 6-kilometer base range, so it's a little higher, but again, you're probably not likely to build a secondary build on this ship. Not with a 23-knot speed. You're going to rarely find yourself, in my opinion, in a position where you're going to be able to use it, so that's, yeah, there they are. Good for them, okay? However, those 5-inch 38s do contribute to her anti-aircraft defenses. Now, similar to Kansas, Minnesota is not quite as robust in the A department as the other American Tier 9 battleships, but it's a much smaller gap than we saw at Tier 8. She does put up less flak than everybody else. She only puts up 6 puffs. Iowa, Georgia, and Missouri all put up 8. And her long-range aura is a small step behind those 3 ships. But her mid-range aura is actually identical to Georgia's, and her short-range aura is best in tier. So, if you were looking at this from a carrier player's perspective, I'd say that this Minnesota is probably easier to torpedo and more challenging to dive bomb in terms of the expected losses you're going to take in terms of planes that are going to die attacking this ship. That's probably a way to quantify it. At the end of the day, though, it's still an American battleship. The A here is still very, very solid. Consumables. Let's have a peak, damage control party, repair, and of course a choice between catapult and spottering aircraft. Like, it's standard, right? This is nothing fancy here. Given the base range, I'd probably go catapult here, honestly. I don't know that the spotting aircraft is going to be all that useful. That'd give you a 20% boost. You could fire shells out to, what, 20, almost 27 kilometers maybe? I mean, is that useful? I don't know. Catapult fighter might turn out to be a little more useful in that it guarantees a few more plane losses for what your AA can't clean up. But that's probably about all you can really say there. As you look at the whole package of Minnesota versus Kansas, I find a lot less to dislike here, right? I don't loathe the idea of Minnesota nearly as much as I loathe what Kansas is on Tier 8 on paper. Minnesota, like, for starters, the gap in firepower is non-existent. You could take an Iowa or Minnesota, and ultimately you're getting the same overall raw firepower, okay, in terms of how fast you put shells down range and so on and so forth. I will say that the accuracy of this ship, of course, is not going to be nearly as accurate as Iowa is, because Iowa's just better in terms of Sigma, right? However, you're putting more shells into the same ellipse. I mean, that's gotta be worth something. For me, I think that the main drawback is what I'm always going to harp on with the American standards, which is kind of where we're at here. The speed, 23 knots of speed on a 48-kilometer square map is just, it's painful, right? It's painful. If you spawn on a flank, you're basically stuck on that flank. If you spawn in the center, you basically have to pick a flank and hope that works. And if the enemy team suddenly steamrolls that flank and you're left all alone, guess what, kids? You're dead. It's only a matter of time. You can't possibly escape. This ship will not escape from anything it's going to see at Tier 9. Nothing. Every other ship in Tier 9 can run this thing down. So, I don't know. A lot of tough tactical choices you make when you have this little speed. Anyway, guys, quick look at Minnesota. Hope you enjoyed that. Wash your hands, be safe out there, and I'll catch you next time.